As an Olympic marathon coach, I've looked at and reviewed thousands of training schedules over the last 2 decades. So trust me when I say I've seen it all. I've coached athletes to the highest peaks of performance, winning some of the biggest races around the world, and I've also seen a lot of failure. And truthfully, it's in those failures where we learn the most. In this video, my team and I will share with you the biggest needle mover when it comes to your running. In fact, in our experience, it's the foundation that everything is built on. We're not just going to tell you what it is, we're going to show you how to deploy the R.E.M.A framework into your life so that you can build guardrails and become the master of your life. The A is where most people start, but in fact is just the final piece of the framework. But the truth is that if you don't get the R, the E, and M right first, implementing A becomes really hard. But more on that later in this video. Before we dive into the R.E.M.A framework, we need to take a step back and look at what this big needle mover is and why it's so important if you want to improve your running.
Thanks, Linz. To be honest, I'm always a little nervous talking about this because it's easy to pay lip service to. It is so simple, and because of that, we don't give it the attention and respect that it deserves. This doesn't only apply to your running. This applies to so many different aspects of your life, and it's probably better for me to give you an example that's not running related so that everyone understands. When it comes to building relationships, consistently investing time and effort in family, friends, and partners builds strong, lasting bonds. I recently got married, so I'll admit I'm new to this marriage thing. But I know that if I come home once every 2 weeks, even if I'm bearing gifts and showering my wife with love while I'm there, I know my marriage is not going to last. Consistency over time is the biggest determinant in success. Whether that is in your relationships, investing your money, your health, and in your running. We've seen it time and time again where the athletes that train with us here at Coach Parry and get the best results are the ones who show up week after week, month after month, year after year. Being consistent with your training sounds easy enough to do, but as you know, life often has other plans. Putting guardrails in place will help you go a long way, and that is why we recommend people do the R.E.M.A framework to help them stay consistent.
The R in R.E.M.A stands for routine, and it's made up of 3 parts. The first part seems super obvious, but it's the main reason why people don't stay consistent. You need to have a structured plan that is built around your life and the time you have available. You are more likely to stick to this plan if it fits into your life and doesn't make it feel like a chore. The second part is that you need to have it written down. This helps you keep it accountable. The reason for that is it helps to know what you're doing ahead of time, but it is also important that it is a flexible plan. When I first started coaching at Coach Parry, we used to email out PDF versions of your training plan. The problem with that is once that's printed out, it's very difficult to move things around and adjust things according to your life. Now our athletes at Coach Parry get to use our app where it is very easy to move sessions around just by dragging and dropping them. The third part of the routine is to keep track of what you've done. Not only is this a great way to see how far you've come over time, but it also helps you to pick up trends over time and to perhaps then troubleshoot when things have gone wrong or to see when things have gone right and you can try and replicate those same things. If you need some help structuring your plans, we've popped a link to our training plans in the description below.
Now that we've got your routine sorted out, the E in our R.E.M.A framework stands for environment. I'm not talking about whether it's hot or cold or whether it's humid or not. I'm talking about creating a supportive environment around you, and that has 2 steps. The second one is less obvious than the first, but probably more important. The first step is to surround yourself with people who are supportive and can keep you consistent. This is easier said than done, and often you'll find yourself in a situation where your spouse is probably not as supportive of your running as you would like because they just don't get it. At Coach Parry, we always try and tell people to get people in their lives that are going to help them and keep them accountable. Something like a running group or a training partner with similar goals to you. That way, it'll really help you get through the sessions in particular that you don't enjoy. I'm thinking strength training and some of the intervals that I do. There is a pitfall here though. You need to make sure that you don't train with someone that is at a much higher ability or fitness than you, or at least make sure that they understand to keep the intensity at a level that's appropriate for you. The second one is your internal environment or self-talk. Don't beat yourself up too badly if you miss sessions or you aren't quite improving as fast as you used to. It's also important to celebrate small victories, like running your fastest time in your 50s or reaching a new milestone.
I think that leads nicely into the third part of the R.E.M.A framework, which is the M, and that stands for mindset. Again, there are 3 legs to the mindset table when it comes to running over 50, and the first one is to manage your expectations. As we get older, we may not be able to perform at the levels that we once used to. That's not to say that we still can't get better, but we just have to manage our expectations around setting our goals specifically for where we are at the moment. The second leg is to set realistic but challenging goals. Following on from the previous leg, we want to set goals for where we are at the moment, but we still want these to be challenging. We still want to try and hit our goals a little bit harder and harder and harder. We may not be able to attain what we did in our 20s, 30s and 40s, but we can still continually improve on where we are now. It's also really important to set long-term and short-term goals. So you may want to do a marathon or an ultra marathon in time, but you also want to set goals that are applicable for this week. So let's say you haven't been doing strength training and you haven't been consistent. Set a goal to be consistent with strength training at least once a week for the next couple of weeks. Those are nice short-term goals to get that are essentially going to help you with your long-term goals in the big picture. The third leg is focusing on the process and the enjoyment of that process versus just the outcome or the goal. If you enjoy the training and the process, it's much easier to stick to a routine and to stay consistent within your plan. And you may not want to only focus on the outcome because very often that can conflict with this natural process of just getting older. We also want to focus on things that we can control, and very often in a sport like running, we can't always control aspects like injuries and so on. So you want to focus on the small aspects that are in your control that will allow you to stay consistent over time. If you're only focusing on the outcome, you can't necessarily control things that happen on race day. And so if you haven't enjoyed the whole process up to that point and you have a disappointing race day, you might be quite despondent for the next process and lose that momentum of training.
Thanks, Shona. Now on to the A in the R.E.M.A framework. I said at the beginning that most people get this backwards and they start with A. They really just try and force the process. You know the deal, no pain, no gain. The problem is that people get frustrated because they're not getting the results that they want to, and it feels so difficult to do it at the time. That may have worked in your 20s and 30s, but as you get older, that's asking for trouble. The A in the R.E.M.A framework stands for action, but not just any action, the right action. You've got to do the right things, and in fact, there are 6 things. And if you get these 6 things right, you will stay consistent in your running for many years to come. Number 1 is to build up slowly. My saying is always, the longer you take to progress, the more sustainable will be the change. You have a much lower risk of injury if you just build your running up slowly and systematically. Number 2 is to train at the correct intensities. This is true of both your high intensity sessions and your easy runs, but the one that most people get wrong is on their easy runs. Make sure that you run your easy runs easy enough, because that'll allow you to run your hard runs hard, but much more importantly, it makes sure that we're actually stimulating the correct physiological systems. The implementation of this is one of the biggest mistakes that I see runners over 50s make. In fact, I'm so passionate about this that I've put together an online webinar where I'll go into a lot more detail about this to make sure that you are not one of the runners that make that mistake. I've popped a link to that in the description below, so check it out and book your seat. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. The third action step is not to catch up missed sessions. No single session makes or breaks a training plan, and in fact, a training plan is the sum of all of its parts. By trying to catch up missed training sessions, you actually throw the future plan out of balance, probably overloading and risking potential injury, illness, but definitely increasing your fatigue. The fourth action step is strength. As we get older, we lose muscle mass. That has both a detriment on your performance, but it also makes us more susceptible to getting injured, and it means that we have to work harder with what we've got. So we tend to get more fatigued and therefore need more recovery time. So it's so important to implement strength training, because the great news about this is that if you do strength training, you can actually reverse some of the loss due to aging. That means that you can regain that muscle mass and you can make yourself stronger, which then means that you have a lower workload per unit of work that you're trying to do. You can actually do more, and therefore your recovery time shorten. So how do you do that? It's ideal to do 3 strength training sessions per week. But here at Coach Parry, we realize that we all lead busy lives. That is not always practical advice. So target 3. If you can't do 3, try and do 2. If you can't do 2, make sure that you do at least 1 strength session per week, so that you can start improving as a runner and reduce your injury risk and shorten your recovery time. Action point number 5 is listen to your body. You need to take note of how you feel and then make some adjustments around that. So if you're feeling aches or pains in particular, that's a sign that your body's not quite coping with the level of training that you are doing, and you need to modify, perhaps having some more recovery or adding in something like cross training instead of running, just to go a little bit easier on your body. There are also a few physiological things that you can look at, metrics like heart rate variability, that you can take into account to help you make decisions about how to modify your training. But it's important not to get too obsessed with that and react to every change. For example, if you are tracking resting heart rate, that'll stay fairly consistent over time. And if it goes up or down by 3 to 4 beats per minute, that's okay. Take note when it starts to get to 5, 6, 7 beats higher than normal, but don't be overly reactionary. See what happens for 1 to 2 days before you make any decisions about whether you should change or not. Action step number 6 is recovery. This is just so important as we get older. The magic happens when we recover. So if you're training hard but you're not giving your body the opportunity to recover, you're actually going to push yourself deeper and deeper into a hole. You're going to be feeling tired all the time, you're going to be feeling sore all the time, and you're actually going to be getting slower. So you have to prioritize recovery as you get older, so that you can make sure that your body can repair itself, that you can improve your body's ability to transport oxygen to muscles, to transport energy substrate to the muscles, and to remove that waste product from the muscles, so that you get better and better over time, so that you rock up at workouts feeling good, feeling fresh, and looking forward to your training. That is how you're going to improve. Recovery is so important for runners over 50, and there are quite a few practical things that I do in my regime that will really help to speed up your recovery. Watch this video next, where Shona and I will walk you through our science-backed recovery routine that will help you bounce back from sessions quicker and not have you feeling tired all the time.